This is the third part of Chapter 16, so 16-3, preparing a balance sheet. So it's our third financial statement that we need to do. And remember, a balance sheet, when we talk about that, and our original formula, assets equals liabilities plus owner's equity, the accounts in that balance, the assets, liabilities, and owner's equity will be coming into play for the balance sheet. So balance sheet information, this is the information from the adjusted trial balance on a worksheet. Again, thinking about assets, liabilities, owner's equity type of mindset here. So the first section of the balance sheet, first of all, here's the heading again. This time it's an exact date and time, which is the end of the year, typically. So name a company, balance sheet, last day of the month of the year. And we have the first section of assets, the current assets. So anything that's coming into play right here are the current assets. This is going to be important in the first part of the 16-3 aptly apart problem. The next one is called our plant assets. So our plant assets are things like our office equipment minus the depreciation. Our store equipment minus the depreciation would equal our plant assets. Then there's the liability section, and we have typically any liabilities used within a short time, typically a year, are called current liabilities. Anything longer than a year are long-term liabilities. We're really only going to focus on the current liabilities. So our liabilities section here, anything with accounts payable, anything with the word payable at the end is a liability. It's money we owe, including all of the payroll, so Social Security tax, Medicare, health, all of those things we learned about in previous chapters. And then we have the last section, the stockholders' equity, which involves the capital stock, retained earnings, and stockholders' equity, or total stockholders' equity. And this is what the completed balance sheet will look like. And remember, just like in the previous, we have the assets section here, equals liabilities and owner's equity. So at the end, these total assets will equal the total liabilities plus the total stockholders' equity to be in balance. So here is the first section. In 16-3, work together. There are 4 steps. The first one is asking you to go through each of these accounts and decide if it's a current asset, a plant, a current liability, long-term stockholders' equity, and if it's not on the balance sheet at all, you would check that. So go ahead and do that. You can see right here, I'll go through the current assets section. So from cash all the way down to the interest receivable are all the current assets. So fill it in, and then I'll come back and show you the answers. So like we said, the current assets go from cash all the way down to interest receivable. The plant assets involve the office equipment, the depreciation of that, the store equipment, and the depreciation of that. So those 4 accounts. The current liabilities, anything from accounts payable all the way down to dividends payable. Long-term liabilities, we have none. We're not dealing with any long-term liabilities. Stockholders' equity is the capital stock and the retained earnings. And anything that's not listed on the balance sheet would then be checked. So in this case, it's from dividends all the way down to interest income. Okay, this next section is number 2, balance sheet characteristics. So you're basically just answering the questions as they ask you. The amounts for the balance sheet are obtained from which source? Check all that apply. So you're going to check any of them that apply. And asset-related contra account balance is blank. It gives you a drop-down menu here. The assets account balance is to determine the book value. So go back into the PowerPoint and take a look at that. The next one of which of the following amounts should receive a double rule. Remember, double rule is the 2 lines, which means nothing else goes under it. So if you go back and you look at this, you can see the double rules that apply. And then which of the following amounts should be equal? And if you go back to that PowerPoint again, we kind of gave it away here. Total assets equals total liabilities and stockholders' equity. So fill in those amounts or those check marks and so forth on this, and then I will show you the answer to check that out. All right, let's see if you got it right. This first section, you should have had adjusted trial balance and the statement of stockholders' equity. The second one should be deducted from So anything that's a contra kind of means opposite. It's deducted from that balance. Of the following, which amount should have a double rule? Total liabilities and stockholders' equity and total assets. And then which ones should be equal? Assets and total liabilities and stockholders' equity. Section 3, we're going to be doing the assets section of the balance sheet. So they give us the adjusted trial balance information here with all of the amounts for all of our accounts. We have a statement of stockholders' equity, and we have the tax section list. So this just gives us all of our account names. And it says the adjusted trial balance and statement of stockholders' equity is given above of the current year. We're going to prepare the assets section of the balance sheet. So when we're talking about that, it's this whole upper section of the assets amount. So use this as your guide as you're going through each of these categories. So we'll get you started here with the title of the company, Superior Corporation, the balance sheet, December 31st, comma, 20 dash is the heading. The first section title is assets, and the first section is the current assets. So to find the amounts, here's a couple of them. Cash, we're going to go up to our adjusted trial balance, and here's our cash, $43,355.47, and plug it in. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to go through and see if you can come up with the correct answers after plugging in all the information to come up with the current assets at the bottom. All right, so here's the answers. We did this first couple up here, just plugging in the amounts. So we're in the second column when we're plugging in all of the assets, but cash, we've got from above, petty cash 200, accounts receivable, because we have to do some math, we put that in the first column. So accounts receivable 16,305.45 less the allowance for uncollectible accounts. So that 16,000 minus this 2,000, we get this 13,000 number. Merchandise inventory, the 81,000 number, and so forth. After plugging these all in, you're going to add this entire column, including these two, so this whole column right here, to get our total current assets of $147,542.97. Then we have our plant assets, so we have to do some math. We have our office equipment minus or less the accumulated depreciation on that, so 19,000 minus 12,000 to get the 7,000 number. Same thing for the store equipment, minus the depreciation on it to get this number. So total plant assets, we're going to add our office equipment and our store equipment after we took out the depreciation to get this 38,000 number. Then to get our total assets, 147 of the current plus the 38,000 something in our plant to get a total of 185,715.40. I hope you did that math correct, but if you didn't, go back and see where you might have made an error by looking at these answers. This last section then, the liabilities and equity section, you're going back to this completed balance sheet. Now you're doing this bottom section right here. So all of your liabilities, we're going to start with current liabilities, because remember, we're not going to do any long-term liabilities, so these are the current. We're going to get a total. Then we're going to do the statement of, or the stockholders' equity, basing some of this from the stockholders' equity that we prepared earlier. So this is what you're kind of basing your information from. So it gives us the adjusted trial balance, the statement of stockholders' equity, which you're going to need this time. And down below, it gives us what you just did in the previous part 3. And now we're starting right here with the liabilities section. So we're going to have liabilities. The first heading under liabilities is current liabilities, and we're going to start with accounts payable. And you're getting your numbers back up here. So scroll down to accounts payable, 13,191 is the first number that you will plug in here. So go ahead and see if you can do this section on your own and come back to see if you got it correct. Okay, let's check your answers. So your current liabilities, after you just plugged in all of your amounts, you're going to have total liabilities of $26,783.20. The last section, stockholders' equity, you're going to start with your capital stock, $82,500 that you got from your adjusted trial balance, I believe. Right here, capital stock line 26, $82,500. And this, if you got anything wrong, it might have been this. So your retained earnings you do not get from the adjusted trial balance. You would not plug in this 15,000 number. Instead, you've calculated a new number when you went, if I can get up there, when you did the statement of stockholders' equity. So you completed this last time to come up with a new retained earnings. So right here, your new balance of retained earnings in this section called retained earnings, you had a beginning balance and then you did some math, and your ending balance is right here, $76,432.20. So that's what's getting plugged in right here. And you add these two together to get your total stockholders' equity, and then add them together, both liabilities and stockholders' equity here. So total liabilities plus stockholders' equity to get the total amount, $185,715.40, which matches the assets up above. So check those numbers over again, and hopefully you did your math correctly to get the final answer. And again, I'm going to be kind and only make you do the work together problem on this and not the on your own problem.